Friends, I Naziya will welcome you to today's discussion where we will discuss various aspects of our society including relationship between rural and urban sections, caste and community and their fundamental features in the societal context. We will also try to have an insight on their role in managing changes and influencing people. Let us start with understanding some specific terms and their definitions that we would require to know here. Defining community. Human beings live a collective life in a specific area with fellow feelings, which is called community. A village, a town, a city, etc. are the examples of what can be called as a community. A community needs to have a few essentials like a group of people, a definite locality, and connecting sentiments. Three kinds of major communities are namely rural, urban, and tribal. However, we will confine our studies to rural and urban communities for now. Rural and urban communities. Sociologists have used three criteria to classify community into rural and urban communities. They are size of population, numerical strength, occupation, and kind of relationship among people. Meaning of rural and urban communities. Rural community is one which consists of relatively small size of population, follows agriculture and elite activities as a major occupation and possesses primary relationships. Primary relationships are intimate, personal and face-to-face relationships, whereas urban community is one which consists of relatively large size of population following non-agricultural occupations and possessing secondary relationships. Secondary relationships are not so intimate, impersonal and indirect relationships. Differences between rural and urban communities. Agriculture and elite activities are pursued as a major source of livelihood in rural community, while in urban community, non-agricultural activities are pursued as a major source of livelihood. The size of population in rural community is limited, while in urban community, size of population is relatively large. Caste-based social stratification prevails in rural community, while in urban community, class-based social stratification operates significantly. Joint family has been traditionally a predominant forum in rural community, while in urban community, nuclear family is predominant. The incomes of rural people are generally low and thus their standard of living is also low, while the incomes of urban people are relatively higher and thus they have better standards of living. Incidence of illiteracy is higher in rural community while literacy rate is higher in urban community. After having comprehended the basic features and differences of a rural and an urban community, we can try and understand the relationship between the two. The term urban-rural relationship has a long history in the study of economics, geography and regional planning. The term urban-rural relationship started being used to emphasize the visible and invisible flows of people, capital, goods, information and technology between urban and rural areas. Here in India, urban system is the product of a long and complex history and the urban-rural dichotomy is marked. While urban India is often viewed as modern and commercial, rural India is generally characterized as myopic, backward and traditional. The diffusion of a modern commercial sector into traditionally agricultural areas is seen to be slow because of the lack of small-sized towns and mainly of the major cities are viewed as the centers of introverted economic systems. Moreover, the long colonial rule in India also played its part in creating an urban-rural divide. However, at modern times, the distinction between rural and urban areas has blurred. It is a result of social change propelled by different factors as well as a trend called urbanization.
Who are the most marginalized in the villages in India? The most marginalized in the villages in India are the people from the lowest castes, the ones at the margin, the last end of benefit. Generally, these were people who were assigned menial tasks or landless laborers. It is obvious that if you are a landless laborer and in case of displacement, drought, famine, off season, you are going to look for livelihoods. Now, where will you look for the livelihoods? That means there is a rural push, and these people are then struck by their poverty and make do with migrating to urban areas. Now, when they come to urban areas, obviously they do not have any money. What will they do then? They become the beneficiaries of the state. They have no place to go. They cannot go to someone else's house. They don't have money for rent. These are the people who form the slums. The marginalized of the rural areas become the marginalized of the urban areas. Now, what will they do? These people are generally not skilled because they have been kept out of the national system of education and skill development and basically have been left to fend for themselves. With a lack of skills and education, they are left to do menial tasks, manual work. And they live in the slums, they draw rickshaws, they work in dhabas, they carry load in mandis. Due to migration in the urban areas, these people again have to fend for their living. Once in the urban areas, due to lack of education and skill sets, they are reduced to doing manual and menial work. The nature of the work that they do is more in terms of pulling the rickshaw or carrying loads in mandis. Now, what happens to their caste? Obviously, in an urban area, people are not very concerned about what the original caste is. But in the urban area, they are in the fringes of being a marginalized class. They are not readily accepted and they cannot move forward. They cannot move, there is no social mobility, no moving up in the hierarchy of the social classes of the urban areas. The only probable way of changing their livelihoods and their lifestyle is by imparting the new generation education and new skill sets so that they can break the barriers of caste and class and instead of being excluded, become included in the mainstream of India.
Let us begin with social change as a factor that helped mitigating the distinction between the two. There are 5 broad types of sources or causes of social change: environmental, technological, economic, political, and cultural. Environment. Nature, ecology, and physical environment have always had a significant influence on the structure and shape of society. This was particularly true in the past when human beings were unable to control or overcome the effects of nature. For example, people living in a desert were unable to practice settled agriculture of the sort that was possible in the plains, near rivers, and so on. So, the kind of food they ate or the clothes they wore, the way they earned their livelihood, and their patterns of social interaction were all determined to a large extent by the physical and climatic conditions of their environment. Technology and economy. The combination of technological and economic change has been responsible for immense social changes, especially in the modern period. Technology affects society in a wide variety of ways. As seen above, it can help us to resist, control, adapt to, or harness nature in different ways. In combination with the very powerful institution of the market, technological change can be as impressive in its social impact. Politics. In the old ways of writing and recounting history, the actions of kings and queens seemed to be the most important forces of social change. But as we know now, kings and queens were the representatives of larger political, social, and economic trends. Individuals may indeed have had roles to play, but they were part of a larger context. Similarly, if we consider our country's parliamentary democratic system, we will understand that a lot of changes take place in the society owing to the political scenario. Thus, political forces have surely been among the most important causes of social change. Culture. Culture is used here as a short label for a very wide field of ideas, values, beliefs that are important to people and help shape their lives. Changes in such ideas and beliefs lead naturally to changes in social life. Social order and social change in rural areas vis-a-vis urban areas. Villages are small in size, so they usually permit more personalized relationships. It is not unusual for members of a village to know almost everyone at least by name or face. Moreover, the social structure in villages tends to follow a more traditional pattern. Institutions like caste, religion, and other form of customary or traditional social practices are stronger here. For these reasons, unless there are special circumstances that make for an exception, change is slower to arrive in villages than in towns. Let us now discuss trends of urbanization. In 2000, the world's urban population had increased to almost 2.9 billion, about 47% of the total population. Today, Asian countries have emerged as most populous countries. According to United Nations study of 1995, by the year 2015, 10 of the world's 15 largest cities will be in Asia, 3 of these will be in India. Of the 10 most populous countries, 6 are in Asia. The structural reforms and the associated development strategies launched in 1991, which we often refer to as globalization, are expected to accelerate rural-urban migration and boost the pace of urbanization. The demographic and economic growth in India is likely to be concentrated in around 50 to 60 large cities with population of about a million or more. There is migration from villages to town and cities which results in growth of metropolitan cities since they provide multiple avenues, services and amenities vis-a-vis education, healthcare, employment, business and entertainment options, etc. People also migrate for economic opportunities and urban lifestyle. Between 1951 and 2001, the level of urbanization in India increased by 13 percentage points. It has the second largest urban population in the world and more than two-thirds of it lives in the 393 cities that have population of over 1 lakh. The 4 megacities with a population of more than 6 millions each in 2001 account for almost one-fourth of population living in cities. The result of the above-mentioned concepts is a linkage developed between the rural and urban areas. Some also term it as rural-urban continuum. A few of the sociologists have used the concept of rural-urban continuum to stress the idea that there are no sharp breaking points to be found in the degree of quantity of rural-urban differences. The rapid process of urbanization through the establishment of industries, urban trades and facilities has decreased the differences between villages and cities. McIlroy remarks that though the communities are normally divided into rural and urban, the line of demarcation is not always clear between these two types of communities. There is no sharp demarcation to tell where the city ends and country begins. Every village possesses some elements of the city and every city carries some features of the village. Therefore, seeing rural and urban sections as completely distinct is misleading and bad for development. Many poor households have both rural and urban components to their livelihoods, including family members living and working in different locations. Rural people depend on services and markets in their local town, while many people and enterprises in towns and cities depend on the rural economy. Lives and economies are increasingly connected across villages, hamlets, small towns, cities, and pre urban areas. Therefore, urban rural relationship add a significant dimension to understanding the key territorial development issues and formulating effective policies to address them. The urban rural relationships need to be strengthened in a way that benefits both rural and urban populations. Realizing the potential benefits of urban rural linkages rests not only on strengthening these linkages but also mitigating their negative impacts. Moreover, in the rural areas, there are many resources lying unutilized. It is time to identify these and make proper use of them. The application of information technology can be of great help in identifying what is lying unutilized or underutilized. Caste and community. We will now take up the subject of caste community relationship. Caste community or a culture system is intrinsically a facet of a group phenomenon. We usually refer to them as social groups. A social group would connote to a collection of human beings who are interacting with one another in accordance with a set of norms. Keeping the definition in mind, we can chart the important characteristics of social group. They are a group of people, social interaction, common interest, system of leadership, we feeling, group norms, size of group. Besides, there are various factors which come into play in the formation of social groups, as they are the primary reasons why people would come together with a sense of coherence.
Indian society is based on caste hierarchy. Some thinkers conceptualize this division on the basis of Varna system. According to Varna systems, our society is divided into four Varnas: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. The condition of Shudras have historically been very pathetic. However, in the later Vedic period, the Jajmani system influenced the division of society. In this system, subcastes were considered lower and the least, and mostly menial jobs were assigned to them. All opportunities of growth and development like education, job employment were closed for them. They were not allowed to change their profession. This traditional subjugation have laid a very big impact on the condition of these castes in the modern period. In the present time also, despite the enactment of various laws and policies of central and the state government, like the SC/ST Atrocities Act, the establishment of Human Rights Commission and State Human Rights Commission, the role of civil society, the condition of people belonging to this caste have not much improved. Various discrimination, bias, favoritism are directed towards them. A small percentage of population belonging to these castes have benefited from the government programs. More than 80% of the population belonging to these castes still resides in remote villages, where they have to face a lot of discrimination, social bias and favoritism in their socio-economic life. In the present time, we have seen a lot of migration of people belonging to these castes in the urban areas. When they move to urban areas, their caste identity, their region background became important parameters for getting a good job opportunity. In this rural-urban divide scenario, important factor we need to focus is that this division of society, this discrimination, this social bias is all result of man-made system, and it is not affecting the people belonging to this caste only, but to the whole nation in this globalized society.
The important factors considered in the formation of groups are occupation. There are various groups like the ones formed by the farmers or teachers or workers which come together owing to their common occupation. Trade unions, farmers, panchayats are glaring examples of it. Caste. Then there are groups coming into existence because of common caste. Dalits associations, Brahmins associations, etc. exemplify this phenomenon. Religion. Social groups are also formed by religious notions. Hindu Mahasabha, Christians associations are examples of it. Region. Regional proximity can also lead to formations of groups. Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, Telugu Desham Assam Gan Parishad, etc. are local political groups that came into being owing to their regional connection. Race. In global panorama, races also form social groups. Whites, Negroes, etc. are illustrations. Income. How much a group comprising a certain number of persons earns will also make them classified under groups like upper class, middle class, lower class. Common interests. Similarly, where people meet as a common area of interest will also lead to formation of social groups, like in schools, recreational clubs, etc. Concept of social stratification. Social stratification refers to the division of society into different strata or ranking of people or group into socially superior and inferior positions. Strata imply existence of status differences, characteristics of groups or society. Then there are two types of status: ascribed status and achieved status. Ascribed status is one given to individuals or groups based on certain factors such as caste, religion, sex, age, race, etc., upon which they have no control. This will include caste status, racial status, religious status, etc. Achieved status is one obtained by people or groups by their efforts and personal competence. Examples are professors, doctors, engineers, etc. There are certain bases on which social stratification is usually carried out, and people or groups are ranked into different social status levels. They are income, gender or sex, wealth, race, education, religion, occupation, and caste. Let us now look at the role of caste system in the Indian society. Caste is a group of people who often, not always, have association with hereditary occupation, eat and marry among themselves, and avoid interaction with members of other outgroups. According to M.N. Srinivas, the political process of any society is influenced by the nature of the society. To understand the nature of the society, we study its social structure. India's social structure is best understood in terms of caste system, wherein the caste is hierarchically arranged. In the typical Varna Vyastha, there are four Varnas: Brahmin, the priest and the intellectual class; Kshatriyas, warrior and the ruling class; Vaisyas, the producing class, peasants and artisans; and Shudras, those who performed menial and polluting jobs. Over the years, the caste system developed into an elaborate system to maintain socio-economic inequalities in the society. Individuals born in and belonging to the lower castes and the outcasts suffered from many disadvantages and were oppressed and exploited by the upper castes. Caste as group identity, however, got strengthened in the new context of modern ideas and institutions. This happened because it became one of the bases of political mobilization among the many castes and classes before, during the freedom struggle and afterwards. The socio-religious movements of the 19th century had made the lower castes conscious of their backward conditions and also of their rights that had been denied to them over the centuries. As a result, many amongst them were no longer prepared to accept their inferior status as divinely ordained. In the backdrop of this awakening, the introduction of democratic principle of governance, the emergence of party-centered politics, and the attempt of the British rulers to mobilize the lower and the outcasters along with the Muslims in its support to thwart the growing national movement, all combined to prepare the ground for the politicization of the castes. By the time India gained independence, the backward classes, because of politicization, had become a force to reckon with. Their claims and demands could no longer be ignored. At the same time, the nationalist leaders were also committed to the task of improving their conditions. In light of the above, the constitution makers enjoined upon the new state to take positive measures for bringing the backward classes at par with the rest of the society. They realized that without the positive intervention of the state, it would not be possible to remove their historically accumulated backwardness. The policy of reservation for the backward classes needs to be understood in this context. Backward classes refer to three categories of the people: the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and the other backward classes. In light of the historically accumulated backwardness of the backward classes and the need to bring them at par with the rest of the society, Constitution provided for protective and positive discrimination. Protective discrimination is not an exception but integral to the right to equality. Caste and community. In Indian context, where the communities were formed on the basis of religion or region earlier, there has been a significant change in the outlook in the modern era of globalization. Contemporary and present times stay witness to and believe in much more an amalgamation of various communities in India put together with globalization aiding in several occasions. The concept of Indian communities has become much more panoptic and international in conscience, almost lapping up everything coming to its way. Conclusion. Therefore, we can now understand the significance of rural, urban and caste community relationships in the process of major policy decisions that have to be adopted by a government, keeping in view the various aspects of these propositions. 5-year plans, other annual plans, budgetary allocations, local governance policies pertaining to panchayats, zilla parishads, etc. are the examples of the decisions taken by the people at the helm of affairs after a keen consideration of the rural-urban relationship, which will involve phenomena like urbanization, urban poor migration, dip in agriculture and such other vital factors. Similarly, reservation policy for the backward classes in accordance with the fundamental rights and directive principles of the state policy as enshrined under the Indian Constitution, women's reservation policy, admission and electoral policies, etc. are a direct reflection of the caste community system that India has. It clearly shows how important this aspect is in the context of our country. So friends, what we learn by this discussion is not just the terms and their characteristics but also the vital role played by them in the drafting of country policy. These relationships have varied with time and will keep on changing, and so would be the policies. See you again soon. Goodbye.